another episode of Design and Influence. We're here, part of ARC IT team. The Brain Trust is gonna, and not me, my guests are gonna sort of help us understand how to better run architecture businesses from the IT perspective. Or in other words, how to have less headaches, how to make some decisions. We'll have a lot of experience and background helping architecture, design, engineering firms run their IT. So we're here basically answering commonly asked questions and kind of getting a little bit of a discussion to help you, our dear listeners and watchers, make a intelligent decision when it comes to your IT and running your business smoothly, operating smoothly, and so on. Here with me today to talk about email archiving is Mark and Harry. Gentlemen, how the heck are you?
Good. Hello, Harry.
Good, Mark. Nice to be with you guys today.
Yeah, it's good. Nice to meet you. You ain't meeting nobody here. They're meeting you.
Yeah.
Hey, so before we start the show, Harry has a big fly in his office, so he's flotting around a bit. So we'll just try to play around that. All right.
Yes.
Topic today is Microsoft versus Google email archiving. Before we go, Microsoft versus Google, and I think we talked pre-show, the gents here, the engineers have a pretty clear sort of winner here, but there we go, swat them. We want to talk about email archiving. What is this? Why are we doing this? What's email archiving? Just help us understand like the concept of why should firms be doing this, and then we'll go into how.
Yeah, archiving. A lot of turnover at a lot of firms, and we see a lot of employees coming and going. Some are there for a short amount of time. Other end users are there for quite some time, and they have a lot of data in their email that needs to be referenced again. And also for the projects, and also for liability with insurance and legal things that may need to be there. It's just really important to keep that history of the data that's flowing in and out of the company for that end user that's no longer with the organization.
Gotcha. So it's basically for people who leave the company or no longer work with the company. Their information needs to be archived and categorized, so to speak, and then later you should be able to access it. Is that more or less?
Yeah.
Okay. How many solutions? I guess Google and Microsoft are two major solutions. Are there anything else out there you guys have seen or recommended to people or have implemented?
There are other solutions. Most of our clients are Google or Microsoft, and so those are the two big players that people have as their email provider.
And so the archiving process in itself, is it complicated? Is it something people do themselves, or is it more of an IT department kind of task?
I would say it's more of something you'd want an IT department to handle just from the sake of expertise and proper handling. And just to go back to your previous question, Google and Microsoft are pretty much the two big players when it comes to corporate email. So when it comes to archiving solutions, most companies tend to look in-house, which is whatever email solution they're using, they tend to go with whatever solution that email provider has in store.
So in other words, if you're on Microsoft, you got running Teams and all of Microsoft Shop, you're not going to do it on Google, period, right?
Correct. So if you're on Google, you're just going to have to use what Google has. And you don't really have to use what Google has its own solution, but they also have other third-party tools that you can incorporate to your Google suite. So it's up to you if you have an IT department, they can better help you decide what tools will work better for you, what's going to be most cost efficient for you, easiest to use for your users, keep you in compliance with whatever laws apply to your industry. So that's archiving is a very, very important topic, and we usually recommend using your IT for professional help for that.
Gotcha. Now, Jen, help me with the timing. Let's say I'm an architecture firm. John is leaving and just gave us 2 weeks notice. How does that, where does the archiving actually come in or begin?
So The first thing that generally happens is by default is an out of office, some type of auto response that's going to come back saying this employee A is no longer with the company. This is where it starts to drastically differ with Google and Microsoft.
Let's talk about it.
Yeah. So with the Microsoft world, you set that out of office. You convert the mailbox to what's called a shared mailbox, which is free, no license costs needed with it. And that mailbox can still have email flow in and out. It's very simple. And when it's a shared mailbox, people can still send to it. You can still auto forward it and send an auto response, i.e. out of office. That will go back to the sender saying, hey, employee A is no longer with the company. Please forward your messages to here or reach out to, user A, user B, doesn't matter. And that's in a simple way, that's the Microsoft solution at that point is done. The data can live there. It's no cost against your, monthly bill. And it's sort of free to be there. And that's as simple as Microsoft is. And it's really a click of a couple buttons and you're there. Harry, do you want to talk about the Google a little bit more?
Yeah. Google's solution is a little different. Well, it's quite different in the sense that actually you have to pay for it. That's the biggest difference. So as opposed to Microsoft, where they give you a solution to convert a user's mailbox into a shared mailbox, and then give you the access to assign that shared mailbox to any other user. So then you can have a user go through that old user mailbox or usually go through and pull out emails whenever it's needed. Google has a Vault solution, which you actually have to pay for a license to have.
For each?
Correct. So even after the employee leaves, you still have to pay to, if you want to use Google's archiving solution, you still have to pay for that Vault license and then apply it to that user's mailbox. So in a sense, that keeps that mailbox as an archive mailbox for as long as you want and make it available for you or for a user who needs access to it.
So wait a second. Let me try to understand. So if I'm a company of 20 people and I have worked with 30 more over the last 5 years, technically I could be a 50 user license with only 20 employees?
Correct. If you decide to use Google Vault, which is Google's recommended archiving solution, in-house archiving solution. So you could have more licenses. It's cheaper than your live mailbox license, but still you're still paying for a mailbox that you're using. In a sense, you're paying for the service of archiving it. Microsoft gives you that service, correct? It's an ongoing payment. While Microsoft gives you a way around that payment by converting that mailbox from a standalone mailbox to a shared mailbox, and then from there giving you the permission to assign it to another user.
Gotcha. Any more additions to it, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, there's also another solution that it's not as elegant, but there's also Google Takeout, which is another option that you can do with Google. Now that differs in the sense that it's not an active mailbox, and you actually are exporting the data, and then you have to store said data somewhere on a file server. On last solution would be on an external hard drive or something, because there's no backup or anything like that to it. But you can take all of their data, export it out of the Google world, and you basically have just a hard copy of it. Once you have the hard copy of it, you can reference it if you need to. But it's still it's a bulky solution, and that there's no cost to do that other than the time that takes to implement that solution. But again, it's not as at that point there's no auto reply. There's nothing else that is coming from that mailbox. It's no longer a mailbox. It's no longer a user in the Google world. But at least you have their data. You have an archive solution that you can reference back if you need to see a specific email.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and the clunky problem with that is the file type that Google gives you to export it to. you would have to then go and install a third-party tool in order to import that file type in order to make it readable. So it could get very complex the way Google's takeouts can be implemented. There is also the third option on the Google, which is something that we try to work with for our clients, which is something that we actually use for our clients. And this is the option of just, we have them set up an archive mailbox. So they actually pay for a mailbox that will just be for archiving purposes. So in the event where an employee leaves, we export all their email data into that archive storage. Now, the problem with that is searching. When you're actually trying to search for a specific email that came from somebody to somebody, it could get very clunky to find that email. But it's a way of giving them something that's similar to what Microsoft offers, even though they don't have the same capabilities that Microsoft offers.
Interesting you brought up this point. So it's like a dump site where you dump all of the old employees'
Correct.
data. But you're saying my next question was going to be actually search. So let's talk about how search is impacted with this. If you have this dump site on Google, so Microsoft, it's easy, elegant, and searchable, right? Each inbox from a previous employee or team member becomes searchable, right? And becomes archived. Shared, not searchable. Becomes shared, and then you can search through it, I'm assuming, efficiently.
Yeah, and you can still actually, when it's a shared mailbox, you can still send emails as the user if you need to. Or you can take their message that came into them and then send it as yourself and not break the chain, if so to say. So you can continue a thread if you have to, which is used a lot. A lot of companies utilize shared mailboxes in their day-to-day operations, including Arc IT. That's something that we do, and it's an invaluable tool that Microsoft really has. Getting off topic a little bit, but the shared mailbox is a great feature for Microsoft products. And that's what Microsoft allows you to do.
But Harry, you mentioned the dump site. I'm just going to coin it as a dump site with Google. The way that you just create a shared inbox and just dump all the older employee content in there, email content. You said it's clunky on search. Why is that?
Okay, the difference is when you're using a Microsoft, when you do convert a mailbox to a shared mailbox and you assign it to a user, on the user's mail client, it actually appears as a standalone mailbox. So you can go in there and click blah, blah, blah employee, and then use your Outlook search functions to search inside that mailbox. When you do it this way, the way we tend to do for most of our Google clients, which is cost effective and also helps them with compliance reasons, the dump sites, like you phrased it. The problem is all of that data is mangled into one stuff. So you would have to actually go into Google's advanced search menu in order to search for, and that it's not quite intuitive. Not many users know how to use that advanced search function, but you'd have to go in there in order to specifically search for email. And it could get troublesome or cumbersome or less productive when you're having to spend so much time having to find something, as opposed to Microsoft, that's quite easier to do that. So it has its benefits, but the downside will be in terms of searching.
What about Google is really known for search? What about just typing some keywords? You're saying that is too many results, or it's not pulling it correctly, or what's the deal?
Correct. It will just pull up too many results for you just because of how much data is in there. You're not getting specific data from one mailbox. So as opposed to Microsoft, where if I go into a user's mailbox and type in, I don't know, a company name, it would bring up all relevant communication between that user and the company name. But if I were to do that on my dump sites, I could get a million things. It would be a mess to have to sort through what is actually relevant. That's where the search functionality comes in.
Because you're dumping in multiple mailboxes into one. So you want user A, B, and C. You search Adobe, user A, B, and C's results come back. So then you have to filter through who got what and find it that way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So if you're searching, as an example, if you're searching for like Sherman Oaks project, you will have communication from the office assistant regarding this project, communication from a bookkeeper, communication from an engineer, communication from architect, communication from leadership, communication from the sales team. And so, provided all those people have left the company, let's say it's a 10-year-old project and you need to find something. So you'd be hard pressed. So what you're saying is just too much data, and then you have to just sit there and sort through it.
Yep.
Yeah. How often, is this a real problem? In other words, how often do people go back to those archived, beyond the initial, let's say, 90 days or so, 60 days maybe, once that automatic out of office, kind of phase itself out? Mm-hmm. Do people access those archives a lot?
Yeah. From in my experience, it's a very, very vital part of the modern business. Just like Mark said in his opening statements, just always going to be turnover with any company. So the importance of being able to retain data is almost like insurance. You don't need it until you really need it.
Yeah.
So we will just randomly get emails or calls from clients that says, "Hey, I need access to this person's data that left 6 months ago." And then if you don't have an archiving solution, what are you going to do? You're just out of luck. Insurance would be something I compare it to, something that you don't need until you really need it. And for most companies, they, especially their receptionists, you go into many companies and you meet a receptionist and they have access to 5-6 mailboxes from previous employees. So it's quite a valuable way of keeping data.
Do you want to add something, Mark?
I do. One of the big things too is we find a lot with a lot of our architects is, project was done 8 years ago, 10 years ago, and now they're remodeling, and they have to reference a lot of those old communications and documents that may have been sent and stuff like that. So you're right, Alex. In the first 90 days, you're referencing it a lot, and then it does fall off, but then again, it kicks back up again when the project's being revisited 8 years later, and there needs to be the communication that went back and forth. Things are definitely changing nowadays with using more cloud-based solutions. But before, there's a lot of just like sending a PDF and those type of communications, whereas how information was shared. So older emails are definitely something that are really relevant today still.
Yeah, I would still argue that most companies still share a lot of that via email. Some picked up Slack and Microsoft Teams and what have you, but look, a lot of people still share it via email. The fact that we don't here is due to Boris's constant reminding, hey, don't send this attachment in the email, put it in Teams, put it in Teams. Yeah. He said it 1,000 times to me. Eventually, I just kind of course corrected, but other companies don't have the czar that tells them what to do all the time. So there you have it. So that'll be super useful for a long time. But let me switch directions for a sec and talk about access. Now, how do you, or does the company principal, who decides who has access to those archive boxes for previous employees? Because there's some valuable data. There could be some financial data there. There could be some stuff that for people who only, you got to limit access. So how do you do that?
Well, usually that kind of request will come from a higher up in the company. So either company owner, the manager, the office manager, there are specific people of authority within the company that can say, hey, I need so mailbox to be, or so person to have access to so person's mailbox. It's usually from a person of authority within the company.
All right, so go ahead.
So RKT has policies in place with all our clients that when these type of requests come in, that we know we've predetermined site contacts that we reach out to get the approval. I think that's a big thing is we've the policies that are in place at ArcIT to approve these type of things. And generally, just like Harry said, they're coming from C-levels, they're coming from the C-suite, they're coming from the office manager, whoever is the appointed contact on site.
Got it. And then you basically instrument access, and then that's it. From there on, if they need more people to access, you'll let the IT department know, which is us. Gotcha.
Correct. So we instrument access, and we also verify that the user has access. It's a closed loop. We don't just say give access and then you give access. You give access and then you make sure they have access. And sometimes they have questions, and you have to answer those questions, which is all part of a good IT team.
Gotcha. Very cool. So give access, then verify they actually have it, know how to use it. Okay. What about timing? So let's just kind of wrap it up on how long does it take? Like, what is the overall archiving process take? Let's say you got a request today, Mark or Harry. Hey, Tim or John is leaving. What is it? How long does it take you to put this all together? Let's say Microsoft.
They generally will put in a request saying a couple different types. 2 weeks notice is one, so we schedule for 2 weeks out. And then we also have, hey, today at 5:00, we're letting so-and-so go. And there's those requests basically. So whenever the time that they are no longer there, we will, for Microsoft, we go in, we put about an office in, we convert it to a shared mailbox, and we're pretty much done. There are caveats to that. If they're using Teams voice, we may have to leave the license around a little bit longer so we can forward the calls. But there's pretty rare cases where it's not an immediate at 5:00, we can convert it to a shared mailbox.
Correct. To add to that, it's pretty much clicking buttons when it comes to Microsoft archiving. So in a sense, you're just converting, you're not actually moving data. You just converting the mailbox license to a different mailbox license. Whereas in Google, most of the time, you're actually having to move the user data. If you are using Google Vault, then that's different. You're actually just applying a Vault license. But for what we do currently, or archiving policy for Google, we're actually having to move that user's data into another mailbox or export it into a file type. So that process could take hours depending on the size of the mailbox. But for Microsoft, it's pretty much just a few clicks.
Yeah.
Got it. So just give me a quick, does Google, if you're using a dump site or Vault, is it like half an hour work for you? Is it like an hour work for you? What is it usually like?
Again, once you're done clicking the button, sorry, Mark. Once you're done clicking the buttons, again, it just depends on the amount of the size of the mailbox you're actually exporting. And usually we'll get a notification within 30 minutes, an hour, that says, hey, Google is done exporting this mailbox, and then you can go ahead and delete it or whatever you need to do. But the period of time that it takes to export that data just depends on how much data that your employee had.
Gotcha. Mark, you want to add to that?
Yeah. So with Microsoft, for instance, there's the actual archiving of it is 15, 20 seconds. I mean, you literally click a button and it's convert to a shared mailbox. You say yes, and you're done. With that said, it takes longer than that. It's immediately done, but it takes longer than that from an IT standpoint because there's other things that we need to do for offboarding. So, if they put in a request, it may take us a half hour, 45 minutes to fulfill that request, but the actual archiving is literally within seconds. But there's just other things, removing licenses, shared drive. There's a lot of steps that are involved in an offboarding, which could be a topic for a different day. But in this case, the archiving is very quick.
All right. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This is what it takes to archive emails on Google and Microsoft. Hopefully we gave you an idea. Hopefully you have a great IT company that can help you take care of it. If you don't, guess who? ArcIT is here for you. Give us a chance or give us a quick look-see at getarchit.com. And I think next topic we'll do the offboarding. I think that's a big one that we can tackle, the three of us, right?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Thank you very much for watching and listening, and have a fantastic day. We'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.